Hey, I'm going to be sharing with you guys a few insights that I had this past week. So, I was in the bathroom, of all places, at my day job, and I just started to get these insights. And this bathroom, I first have to say, is like it's a private restroom and it's like completely tiled, like the floor, the walls. And I always get a lot of insights there, and I think it's just like the space is like super conducive for that. I get insights in general in like bathrooms, so I don't know, it's just kind of what seems to happen. So anyways, I was in the restroom and I began to have this like unwanted thought stream like play out in my mind, where I was like arguing with someone over like work related things, and it was like over scenarios that like hadn't even happened. It wasn't even something actually going on with my work. It was like me imagining it. And so I was like arguing with, a coworker or something about something. I can't even remember now like the, small details of it, but the main thing, like my takeaway was like it was kind of like bringing up this like resistant, like conflict energy. And I realized like, why am I doing this? And it was just kind of surprising because I wasn't even really like aware that I was like running that kind of script in the background of my mind. So first of all, I noticed it. And then instead of just noticing it and stopping it, I chose to follow the unwanted thoughts and to question them and to question like the source, like where were they coming from? Why was this scenario running through my mind? I definitely recognized that I wanted to stop doing this, and I felt like the best way to do that is to get to the source of it and to figure out like where is this even coming from to begin with. And like the cool thing about questioning like the thoughts that I noticed I was having is like, so we are not our thoughts. So the moment that we have a thought and question it and realize like, hey, like I don't want that thought, like you're not me, where are you coming from? We distinguish ourselves from the thought. Like we observe our thoughts, but we are not our thoughts. However, if we let our thoughts go unchecked and they just keep running and running and running in the background of our mind, then that's like what we adopt. That becomes us. Like we become those unwanted things that we just let kind of go unchecked in our mind. So you always want to stop thought scenarios like that, but then it's good to take it a step further and just question it like, why is this coming up for me? Like, what is it showing me? What does it mean? And for me, I was definitely getting like, oh, this is like resistance, like having like resistant energy, just kind of like running. And so the cool thing about stopping and questioning our thoughts is that once we say like, hey, like, what is this? Like, it isn't a thought that I want. It's like the energy of it begins to subside. So it's not as strong and it begins to unravel. So we can actually get rid of that energy by looking at it and by like questioning like the source of it. And that's kind of just like what I was running, but maybe you're running some other thought scenario or something else in your mind. We all do these things. It's just a matter of like noticing that we're doing them and putting them in check. So the thing about that too is like the fact that I was not only thinking about this like thought scenario in my mind, but I was feeling it. I was like giving life to it and energy to it, like like I was getting frustrated. And the dangerous thing about that is that's how we create, like in our actual world. It's the things we think about, the images that we see in our mind. So I was definitely seeing like images of this playing out, and the feelings that we feel, the feelings that we conjure up, like together, that is what manifests and produces. So I definitely realized like I do not want to be manifesting that in my life. Like, no, thank you. Think I'll take something else. So as I looked at the resistance and looked at like, and questioned like, what is this actually teaching me or showing me? I realized that, okay, like this is showing me that I'm having a lot of resistance. And what is the opposite of resistance? It's ease. it's flow. Resistance is like kind of like getting stuck, stopping. It's like energy that, you know, you can't really get around. But ease and flow are the opposite of resistance. So I realized, okay, I want to be bringing more ease into my life. And it was definitely like a sign and an indicator to me that I definitely needed to be doing that. So, and this is kind of like how things work. So our emotions are actually our friends. I know a lot of times it might seem like that's not the case. However, they're often showing us, as in this scenario, where we can flip the script. So when we notice we're maybe doing a certain thing, or we tend to keep having these certain emotions or thought patterns or like scenarios that we're playing in our mind or whatever, when we question them and we look at the source of them, what they're actually doing, in my case it was resistance, then we can say to ourselves like, okay, this is actually showing me that I'm holding a lot of resistance and that I need to bring in the opposite. That's like the remedy, the medicine, which is ease. So I was actually very thankful to be shown what I needed to work on and bring more of into my life. And that's actually the beauty of emotions and emotional messages, is that they carry these almost like secret messages for us. We just have to like look at them and kind of unravel them a little bit and interpret them, and it's like, oh my God, that was actually super helpful. So it was showing up to help me. And a lot of times we have thought scenarios like the ones that I mentioned, we label them as being bad, but nothing is inherently good or bad. It's only our perception of it. And this is something that I've come to find out in many different areas. And this is just one of like the most beautiful examples. It's like, it's our perception of it. I could just simply say like, oh God, that was bad. I don't want to have like thoughts like that. Or I can look at it as like this medicine, this like healing tool that can actually like help me. So once I discovered that, like, oh my God, like I need to bring in more ease into my life, like, wow, that was amazing. So that I would label as good. So it's kind of just like everything in life is so perception oriented. There's not many things that are inherently good or bad. They're usually both, a combination of both. So what I decided to do next was do my own visualization. And so I was sitting there and I had like my hands behind my head in real life, and I began to imagine like a situation that just immediately filled me with like feelings of ease. And I was like laying out at this like resort that was like on the beach, and I had a friend hanging out with me, and I had a mixed drink next to me, and it was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, and just like I was super visualizing this. And then along with visualizing it and the thoughts I was having, I began to immediately just feel ease and relaxation, and I started to bring that in. And it just felt great. It felt amazing. It felt wonderful. And so, like, for me, I told myself, like, okay, the moment that you start to have resistant thoughts about anything again, you're just going to bring in a visualization like this one. Maybe it's this one. Maybe it's a variation, something different. But you're going to bring that in, and you're going to keep bringing that in, because that is me working with my own energy. The other thought that just popped into my head right now is like, this is our body's internal communication system. So I don't want to go off on this tangent right now, but I will just simply say that our bodies are super intelligent. And I think a lot of times we grow up in like our society not realizing how valuable our bodies are in terms of providing us with information and messages. They're always speaking to us. They're so intelligent and so intuitive. And so when this is coming from within me and I'm having these resistant thoughts, like that is a huge like communication from my body, from my inner system, like, hey, we need to flip the script. And it's me giving myself my own messages and my own answers as to what is needed in my life. So for me, just bringing in that like beautiful new energy and continuing to bring in that, you know, beautiful new energy of ease every time that I begin to feel like resistance, because, you know, we don't always know why things are happening, but I think that a lot of times, you know, it's kind of just like we kind of have to follow like the trail and see where it leads us. And yeah, I think that's about it. I just want to encourage you to try, you know, this for yourself. And next time you have recurring unwanted thoughts, like question them and examine them and pay attention to them, and notice where you might also be able to flip the script.